The morning sun had barely crested over the horizon when Captain Rachel Hayes stood at the gate of Joint Base Norfolk, her polished boots pressing firmly against the cold asphalt. A crisp breeze tugged at the corners of her neatly pressed uniform, fluttering the edges of her name tag like a silent, impatient alarm. The base gate was a routine post, a place where life moved in predictable rhythms. ID cards flashed under scanners, military vehicles rumbled past, and soldiers, some weary, some arrogant, marched on autopilot. For Rachel, the monotony was both comforting and suffocating. She was meant to be invisible here, unnoticed, a cog in a sprawling, meticulously timed machine. 3 weeks in, she had mastered the art of looking ordinary. Her dark hair was tied back in a precise bun, her posture impeccable, and her gaze sharp but measured. She smiled politely at the occasional visitor, nodded to drivers, and scanned the ID badges with mechanical precision. Every so often, someone would make a casual joke about gate duty being the most glamorous post in the military, and she would offer a small, polite laugh. Deep down, she knew they had no idea. She was no ordinary officer. The sound of an approaching helicopter shattered the morning's routine. It was not unusual for aircraft to land at the base, but this one was different. Sleek, black, and almost predatory in its approach, the rotor blades carved the air like a blade. Dust and debris whipped across the tarmac, forcing Rachel to adjust her stance. Soldiers scurried to secure equipment, and the usual chatter died down. Something was about to happen, something that would change the quiet rhythm of her life. When the helicopter touched down, the crowd parted instinctively. And then he appeared. Lieutenant Jason Callahan, a SEAL commander with a reputation that preceded him, stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that looked chiseled by years of impossible missions, he exuded authority that demanded attention. His uniform gleamed with medals and commendations that caught the morning light like a constellation of battles fought and won. The soldiers nearby instinctively straightened, some whispering his name under their breath. Rachel, for her part, felt a strange pull in her chest, a mixture of recognition and curiosity. She had heard the stories of Callahan, of course, missions that seemed impossible, operations so classified that even speaking of them carried risk. He was a living legend. And yet, instead of bypassing the gate like anyone else, Callahan stopped. His piercing eyes locked onto hers. Without a word, he snapped to attention and saluted, a crisp, precise gesture that demanded acknowledgement. Rachel froze for a fraction of a second, then instinctively returned the salute, her hand rising smoothly, her mind a whirl of questions. The other soldiers whispered and nudged one another, astonished. A SEAL commander saluting a gate officer. It didn't happen. Not in their world. And yet, here it was, happening right in front of her. "Captain Hayes," he said finally, his voice low and steady, carrying a weight that seemed to press against her chest. "You're the one they warned me about." Rachel's mind snapped into overdrive. Warned him about me. She had been careful, too careful, some might say. Her years in intelligence were a tapestry of missions that never left a trace, operations that existed only in encrypted files and whispered conversations behind locked doors. She had learned the art of disappearing in plain sight, of blending in while wielding a skill set few could match. And yet, the legend of Callahan, the SEAL commander himself, knew something. Knew her. Before she could formulate a response, he turned and strode past, his boots clicking against the asphalt like a metronome of authority. The crowd seemed to hold its breath in his wake. Soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, some trying to mask their curiosity with forced attention to their own duties. Rachel remained rooted to the spot, her heart pounding, adrenaline surging in a way she hadn't felt since her last covert operation years ago. The gate, once a place of quiet monotony, suddenly felt like the epicenter of something much larger. Every ID she scanned afterward seemed heavier. Every vehicle passing by carried the weight of unseen eyes. She caught glimpses of soldiers stealing glances at her, whispering to one another. Some recognized the significance of the salute. Some merely assumed she had caught a fluke of military courtesy. Rachel's mind raced. Was Callahan here by chance? Unlikely. The SEAL commander's presence was deliberate, precise, calculated, and the words he had spoken, the one they warned me about, echoed in her mind like a bell tolling a warning. Who had warned him, and more importantly, why now? She glanced down the road, scanning the horizon where the helicopter had disappeared. The sun glinted off the metal surfaces, casting fleeting shadows that seemed to crawl toward her. The tension in her chest tightened like a drawn bowstring. Something was coming, something significant, and it wasn't just Callahan. As she returned to her post, she noticed a black SUV approaching the gate, moving slower than the other vehicles. The driver's face was obscured by tinted windows, and the way the vehicle seemed to pause before reaching her made her instincts scream. Years of experience told her this wasn't routine. She squared her shoulders, reached for her radio, and prepared to intercept. At that precise moment, her secure phone vibrated in her pocket. A single message appeared on the screen. "They know where you are. Be ready." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. Her training kicked in instantly, calm on the surface, lightning fast assessment of threats underneath. She scanned the SUV, noting the mirrored tint, the movement of the occupants, the subtle shift in the road debris from the helicopter winds. Everything aligned like pieces of a puzzle that was forming faster than she could comprehend. The driver pressed a button, lowering the window slightly, revealing a face she did not recognize. But there was a coldness in those eyes, a quiet menace that made her stomach tighten. The hum of the bass seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of her own heartbeat and the faint whir of distant helicopters. Rachel's hand hovered near her sidearm, not in panic but in readiness. She had trained for this, lived for situations like this, and yet the sensation of being observed, of being targeted, brought a thrill she hadn't felt since she had left active field duty. The gate, once mundane, had become the front line of something she didn't yet understand. Before she could act, the SUV accelerated slightly and then stopped again, as if the driver was testing her response. Rachel held her ground, her eyes locked on the vehicle, her mind calculating every possible outcome. Her instincts screamed at her that this was no random encounter. Someone had orchestrated this, and she was the intended target. And then, as the SUV's engine purred softly, a figure stepped out, not the driver but someone else entirely. Broad shoulders, a confident stride, and a calm, predatory gaze that locked onto hers. Rachel's pulse doubled. Recognition flared. The figure's presence meant one thing: her quiet watch was over. Something far bigger had just arrived at her gate. The figure's voice echoed across the gate, low but carrying an authority that made Rachel's spine stiffen. Hayes. Just one word, but it carried weight. An unspoken acknowledgement of the past, a history she had buried deep under layers of anonymity and discipline. Rachel's eyes narrowed. She recognized him instantly, though her heart beat faster than it had in years. Lieutenant Jason Callahan, SEAL commander, legend, and the kind of man who could command respect in any room or battlefield, had somehow tracked her down. The fact that he was here at this gate was no accident. Nothing about his presence ever was. The soldiers around them shifted uneasily, sensing tension but unaware of its depth. Rachel adjusted her stance, letting her calm, authoritative exterior mask the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. Years of training had taught her how to handle threats, but this was different. This wasn't an enemy in the field. This was someone from her past, someone who knew her real capabilities. Callahan's gaze swept over her, assessing, calculating, reading her like an open file. Then he spoke again, his tone almost conversational, yet weighted with something darker, more urgent. "We need to talk. Now." Rachel hesitated for only a heartbeat. Part of her wanted to question why, to demand answers. But another part, the part trained to survive, trained to anticipate threats before they arrived, knew better. There would be time for explanations later. For now, discretion was key. She followed him to the edge of the tarmac, where the helicopter had left a trail of displaced dust and heat waves shimmered in the morning light. Soldiers nearby pretended not to watch, but the tension was palpable. Rachel felt the weight of eyes on her, but she didn't look back. Her attention was entirely on Callahan and the questions burning inside her. "You're not supposed to be here," she said finally, her voice steady. "Not like this." Callahan didn't flinch. "I wasn't expecting to find you at gate duty, Hayes," he admitted, his voice quiet, measured, like someone choosing each word with care. "But it seems the intel is correct." Her pulse quickened. "Intel? What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual, though the tension coiled in her chest like a living thing. Callahan took a step closer, lowering his voice further. "There's a threat, a serious one, and they know about you, your past." Rachel stiffened. Her past wasn't supposed to have a shadow over her life anymore. She had been meticulous. Her covert operations were classified, buried under layers of bureaucracy and secrecy. No one outside the highest clearance levels could link her to the mission she had undertaken. Yet Callahan's words made it clear someone did. Her mind raced through possibilities, all of them dangerous. Perhaps a rogue operative she had once neutralized had resurfaced. Perhaps a leak had occurred, exposing details of her history. Or worse, someone within the military hierarchy wanted her gone. "You need to trust me," Callahan said, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that left no room for doubt. "This isn't just about you, Hayes. It's about everything you've fought for, everything you've risked your life to protect, and right now you're in their crosshairs." Rachel's stomach twisted. She had spent years hiding in plain sight, guarding secrets that could topple governments if exposed. And now, the past was clawing its way back into the present, unearthing dangers she thought she had left behind. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to maintain composure. "Who are they?" she asked, her voice betraying none of the fear curling in her chest. Callahan's gaze darkened. "That's what we need to figure out, fast." The tension was electric. Rachel felt it prickling at the back of her neck, like static before a storm. And then, in a sudden, almost casual motion, Callahan reached into his pocket and produced a small, encrypted tablet. He handed it to her without a word. She glanced down and her breath hitched. The screen displayed images she hadn't seen in years, photos from missions she thought were erased, operations that had existed only in the classified archives of the Navy and intelligence community. Faces she had neutralized, locations she had infiltrated, events that had never made the record books. They were all there, laid bare. Her hands tightened around the device, but she forced herself to stay calm. The soldiers nearby glanced curiously, but none could comprehend the weight of what she held. Not just data, but a reminder that the life she thought she had left behind was not done with her. "Someone is digging through everything," Callahan continued, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying the same urgency as before. "They want to find you. They want to know who you really are. And if they do, Hayes, it won't just be your career on the line. It'll be your life." Rachel's mind flashed back to long nights in foreign countries, covert extractions, missions where one wrong step meant death. She had survived by anticipating, by thinking 3 moves ahead. And now, for the first time in years, she felt the edge of panic creeping in, a dangerous reminder that even the most skilled operative could be caught off guard. "You should have stayed in the field," she muttered, more to herself than to him. Gate duty had been meant to be safe, a quiet corner, a place to let her past recede into memory. But safety, she realized, was a luxury she no longer had. Callahan's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained hard. "I know, but you're here, and right now that means you're the only one who can stop what's coming." Rachel swallowed again, her throat dry. Her mind worked furiously, piecing together possibilities, tracing connections, assessing threats. She knew this wasn't just an encounter. This was a warning, a prelude to something far larger and more dangerous than a routine base incident. She glanced toward the gate, where soldiers moved about, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. Her gaze lingered on the tarmac stretching ahead, and she realized that every vehicle passing through, every ID scanned, could be a potential vector for danger. The mundane world she had chosen as a cover was suddenly lethal. Callahan glanced toward the horizon as if measuring the distance of unseen threats. Then he turned back to her, eyes sharp, voice firm. "We need a plan, and we need it now." Rachel nodded, adrenaline and focus converging into a single, lethal clarity. She had trained for this. She had survived worse. But there was something in the way Callahan moved, the urgency in his tone, that made her realize this wasn't just another operation. This was personal. Before she could speak, her secure phone vibrated again. A single cryptic message appeared. "They're closer than you think. Trust no one." Rachel's stomach tightened. She had known the quiet gate duty was temporary, a pause in her real life, but she had never expected it to explode into danger so quickly. And now, with the SEAL commander beside her, with the past clawing back into the present, she understood one unshakable truth. Her life as a gate officer was about to end. She looked at Callahan, searching for reassurance, but saw only the same resolve she had known in combat situations, the same intensity that had made him legendary. And yet, there was also caution, a silent acknowledgement that even they might not be prepared for what was coming. Rachel tightened her grip on her holster, feeling the familiar weight, the reassuring coldness of steel against her hand. She drew a deep breath, steadying herself, channeling every ounce of training, every lesson learned in years of covert operations. The mundane facade of gate duty had vanished in an instant, replaced by the sharp, brutal clarity of survival. And then, from the far side of the gate, a shadow moved, subtle, precise, almost imperceptible. Rachel caught it out of the corner of her eye, a movement so controlled it could only belong to someone highly trained. Her pulse spiked. She turned toward Callahan, his jaw tightened as he followed her gaze. The shadow paused, and then a voice, calm but edged with menace, broke the silence. "Hayes, we've been waiting for you." Rachel's breath caught. The gate that had once been a place of routine, a quiet post, was no longer just an entry point to the base. It was now the stage for a confrontation she had never anticipated, but one she had been trained to survive. Suspense hook ending part 2. The past had found her. The threat was here, and Rachel realized with a chilling certainty that nothing about her quiet life at gate duty would ever be ordinary again. The shadow at the far side of the gate didn't move like an ordinary person. Rachel Hayes' instincts, honed over years of covert missions and high-risk operations, screamed at her that this was no ordinary threat. Every micro-movement, the way the figure's shoulders shifted, the subtle tension in the stance, it all signaled training, precision, and intent. She didn't flinch, though her heart rate spiked, muscles coiled like a spring. Callahan mirrored her vigilance, stepping slightly forward, eyes narrowing. "Stay calm," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the morning wind. "Watch for signs. Don't engage unless necessary." Rachel's gaze didn't leave the shadow. The figure's features remained obscured, but the message was clear. Someone knew exactly where she was, and they were here to send a warning or worse. She weighed her options. Escape was not viable. The gate's perimeter was too exposed. Stand down and risk being blindsided. Not an option either. Before she could act, her secure phone vibrated violently in her pocket. She retrieved it with controlled precision, her eyes flicking to the message. It was from a secure, encrypted contact she hadn't heard from in years. "They know your position. Immediate action required. Extraction compromised. Trust no one inside the base." The words hit her like a blow. Extraction compromised. The base, which should have been a sanctuary, was now a potential trap. Her pulse quickened, adrenaline surging through her veins. The calm exterior she maintained for gate duty was gone. Beneath it, her mind raced, reviewing every threat vector, every possible escape route, every ally she could rely on. Callahan's voice snapped her back. "What is it?" he asked, his tone low but urgent. Rachel showed him the message, her fingers steady despite the urgency coursing through her. His eyes narrowed as he read, lips pressing into a thin line. "Inside," he muttered. "We're compromised from within." Her stomach tightened. Years of covert operations had taught her to expect danger from any direction, but betrayal from the inside was the deadliest. It meant someone with clearance, someone trusted, was feeding information to forces she could not yet see. Rachel and Callahan exchanged a look. No words were needed. The tension was mutual, thick as fog on a battlefield. Every instinct screamed at them to move, to act decisively. And yet they needed information. They needed a plan. The shadow shifted again. Rachel noticed the subtle shift of weight, a step forward, a calculated pause. Whoever it was, they weren't moving randomly. They were testing, observing, calculating Rachel's responses. She forced herself to breathe, to maintain the stillness of someone in control, while her mind catalogued every possibility. Then, almost imperceptibly, the shadow retreated, melting back into the early morning haze. Rachel's grip on her holster tightened, and Callahan moved to a nearby barrier, scanning the perimeter with sharp precision. Rachel felt a flicker of frustration, anger, and fear all at once. This was no ordinary encounter. This was a deliberate message. We know who you are, and you are being watched. Before they could strategize, her secure phone rang again, cutting through the tension like a knife. She glanced at the encrypted ID. It was from an unknown source, routed through multiple channels. Her instincts screamed at her. This could be a trap. She answered anyway, her voice steady. "Hayes," a distorted voice said, barely above a whisper. "You've been exposed. They know about your operations, your missions. Your cover is gone. If you stay at the base, you won't survive the day." Rachel's blood ran cold. The voice, though masked, carried a familiarity, a recognition of her skill set and past operations. Whoever this was, they had done their homework. Every move she had made, every identity she had assumed, every file she had thought destroyed, they knew it all. Callahan leaned closer, catching fragments of the conversation. His jaw tightened. "Do you know who it is?" he asked quietly. Rachel shook her head. "Not yet, but whoever it is, they're methodical, experienced, dangerous." The caller ended the line abruptly, leaving a lingering, static-filled silence that felt almost physical in its weight. Rachel pocketed the phone and exhaled slowly, though her body remained taut, ready for immediate action. "Inside the base," she muttered to herself, "someone is working against us from within." Callahan's eyes met hers, sharp and calculating. "Then we adapt. We find them before they find us." Rachel nodded. Her mind flickered back to her training, to missions where she had faced threats far greater than this, threats designed to overwhelm her physically and mentally. But those missions had been in controlled environments overseas, where allies could be relied upon. Here, inside what was supposed to be a secure base, the rules had changed. The sound of distant footsteps reached their ears. Rachel's hand instinctively went to her holster, movements smooth and precise. She signaled Callahan and he followed, moving silently behind her. Their training kicked in automatically, every sense heightened, every nerve alive with anticipation. They approached the inner perimeter of the base, where the shadows were deepest and visibility was low. Rachel scanned every corner, every doorway, every potential hiding spot. The intruder could be anyone, a soldier, a technician, an officer. And yet Rachel knew the pattern, precise, intentional, almost surgical movements designed to intimidate and test her. Then a flicker of movement caught her eye. A shadow detached itself from the edge of a building, moving with fluid precision. Rachel froze, heart hammering, as the figure stepped into the weak morning light. Recognition hit her like a punch. It was someone from her past missions, a rogue operative she had neutralized years ago, someone she had thought dead. The operative's eyes locked onto hers, and a cruel smile curved their lips. "You shouldn't have come back, Hayes," the rogue said, voice low, edged with venom. I've been waiting a long time for this. Rachel's mind raced. She had trained for confrontations like this, but the stakes were higher than she could have imagined. Not only was her life at risk, but the rogue clearly had insider knowledge. Someone on the base had tipped them off. Callahan stepped forward, weapon raised, his presence a shield and a warning. "Step back," he commanded. "You don't know what you're dealing with." The rogue's smile widened undeterred. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm dealing with," they said, "and so do you." Rachel's muscles tensed. Every instinct told her this was going to be a test of skill, wit, and endurance. Every mission she had ever undertaken had led to this moment, a collision between past and present, duty and survival. The rogue took a deliberate step closer, and Rachel felt the weight of inevitability press down. This was no longer a warning. This was a challenge. Her hand went to her holster, fingers brushing the familiar cold steel. Callahan mirrored her readiness, eyes never leaving the rogue. The tension between them was palpable, like the air before a storm breaks. Rachel's mind catalogued every possibility, every escape route, every tactical advantage she could exploit. The base, once a place of routine monotony, had become a battlefield, a trap, and a proving ground all at once. The rogue operative took another step, eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Are you ready to face your past, Hayes?" they asked, voice dripping with malice. Rachel's lips pressed into a thin line, her jaw tight. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. She was ready. The rogue's movement was a blur. Rachel Hayes' reflexes kicked in instantly, honed from years of covert operations and high-risk missions overseas. She sidestepped, narrowly avoiding a swift strike aimed at her midsection, and pivoted, landing a precise counter to disarm the attacker. Metal clanged, echoing across the tarmac. The base gate, once a quiet post, now felt like the center of a war zone. Callahan moved alongside her, fluid and lethal, positioning himself between Rachel and the rogue. "Don't let them flank you," he barked, eyes scanning every shadow, every possible angle of attack. His reputation as a SEAL commander wasn't exaggerated. Every movement was calculated, efficient, and deadly. Together, they formed a seamless defensive front, two predators in perfect sync. Rachel's heart pounded, but her mind remained razor-sharp. This was no ordinary encounter. It was a test. Someone had trained this rogue meticulously, someone who knew her methods, her strengths, her instincts. Whoever orchestrated this knew that putting her at gate duty wouldn't make her vulnerable. They knew she would react, and they were ready. The rogue smirked, circling them with predatory grace, eyes flicking between Rachel and Callahan. "Impressive," they said, voice low and mocking. "But not enough." Rachel noted the subtle tension in their shoulders, the slight hesitation in their footwork. Despite the veneer of confidence, the rogue had a tell, a flaw she could exploit. Years of observing enemies in combat flashed in her mind, instincts honed to perfection. She adjusted her stance, letting her body flow like water, ready to strike at the perfect moment. Callahan's eyes met hers briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. This wasn't about heroics. It was about survival and control. They needed to end this quickly, before anyone else on the base became collateral damage. The rogue lunged again, faster this time, a controlled fury behind every movement. Rachel sidestepped, twisting her body in a smooth arc, sending the attacker stumbling past her. The air shimmered with tension, charged like electricity before a storm. She felt the familiar rush, the clarity of danger, the adrenaline, the focus of survival instinct kicking into overdrive. But then a new variable appeared. From the shadows near the command vehicles, a second figure emerged, silent, deliberate. Another intruder. Rachel froze, processing the addition. Two highly trained operatives moving in tandem, their coordination precise, their intent lethal. The base was no longer just compromised, it was a battlefield. Callahan muttered under his breath, eyes scanning the incoming threat. "They're not just testing you," he said grimly. They want to see how far you'll go to protect yourself. Rachel's muscles tensed, every nerve alive. She had trained for ambushes and traps, but this, two highly skilled operatives, inside a supposedly secure military base, was different. Whoever had orchestrated this knew exactly where she was, knew her location, and had anticipated her reactions. The rogue from before recovered quickly, circling them with renewed aggression. "You thought gate duty would be safe, Hayes," they sneered. "But safety is a lie. You're exposed now, and everyone around you is a target." Rachel felt the weight of those words settle over her like a physical force. She glanced around. The gate was still manned by unsuspecting soldiers, some merely observing, others oblivious to the danger that had unfolded in moments. Their lives hung in the balance. Every decision she made from this moment would determine whether they survived or died. She tightened her grip on her sidearm, but she knew the fight was more than just firearms. It was tactics, instinct, strategy. Every step, every movement, every glance could mean the difference between life and death. Rachel and Callahan moved as one, coordinating silently. They drove the first rogue back toward the edge of the tarmac, using their combined weight and precision to control the battlefield. But the second operative circled closer, appearing from behind a row of armored vehicles, attempting to flank them. Rachel pivoted, bringing her training to bear in a flurry of controlled motions. A swift elbow to the rogue's chest sent them staggering. A calculated kick to the side knocked them off balance. But before she could secure the rogue fully, the second intruder lunged at Callahan. The SEAL commander reacted instantly, intercepting with the strength and precision only years of elite training could produce. The clash of bodies, boots, and fists echoed across the empty tarmac like thunder, reverberating in Rachel's chest. The rogue on the ground snarled and scrambled back to their feet, pulling a concealed weapon with lightning speed. Rachel's eyes widened, and time seemed to stretch in that moment. Her instincts screamed, "Don't hesitate, act now." She dove to the side, rolling and pulling her sidearm in a fluid motion, her aim precise. A single shot disarmed the attacker, sending the weapon clattering across the asphalt. Callahan dispatched the second intruder with the same lethal efficiency. The operative crumpled to the ground, incapacitated but alive. Rachel had no desire to kill unnecessarily. Their training had taught restraint as much as it had taught lethality. For a heartbeat, the battlefield was silent. Dust swirled around them, the remnants of disrupted gravel and debris clinging to boots and uniforms. Rachel's chest heaved, adrenaline pumping, mind scanning every inch of the tarmac for new threats. But then a subtle movement in the shadows caught her eye. She froze, heart hammering. It was too deliberate, too controlled to be anything random. Someone or something was still watching. Callahan's gaze followed hers, narrowing. "You see that?" he whispered. Rachel nodded, her mind racing. Whoever had orchestrated this wasn't just testing her. They were sending a message. And if that message had reached her, it meant the conspiracy extended far beyond gate duty or even this base. Suddenly, her secure phone buzzed again. She checked the screen. Another encrypted message, brief but chilling. "You stopped the first wave. The real test is next. Be ready." Rachel's stomach twisted. The rogue operatives were just the beginning. This was no isolated attack. This was a calculated strike, designed to provoke fear, to destabilize, to gauge her reactions. She felt a cold edge of determination settle over her. Gate duty had been boring, routine, and uneventful, but she had never wanted boring. She had trained for danger, for chaos, for missions where lives hung in the balance. And now, danger had come to her doorstep in a way she hadn't anticipated, but she was ready. Callahan's eyes met hers. "They know about you, Hayes, and they're not done. We need to move now." Rachel nodded, her mind already calculating the next steps. She knew the terrain, the layout of the base, the blind spots, the escape routes. Every advantage, every trick, every lesson learned in the field would be necessary if they were to survive the next wave. The rogue operatives were neutralized for now, but Rachel knew instinctively that this was only the beginning. The true enemy remained in the shadows, orchestrating every move, every threat, every test. She glanced toward the gate, once a symbol of routine and monotony. Now it was the front line of something far larger, far deadlier, and far more personal than she could have imagined. Her hand rested on her holster, fingers brushing the cool steel, and she felt the familiar surge of focus. Every mission she had ever undertaken had led to this moment, the collision of past and present, skill and instinct, survival and duty. And then, as she scanned the shadows once more, a figure emerged from the far edge of the base. Taller, more deliberate, moving with a precision that made her pulse spike. This was no ordinary operative. This was someone who had planned everything, timed every movement, and intended to see her fail. Rachel took a deep breath, muscles coiled like springs, eyes locked. Callahan's hand hovered near his weapon, ready to react. The tension between them and the new figure crackled like a live wire. The intruder stopped, just out of reach, and spoke, voice calm but carrying a lethal edge. "Welcome back, Hayes. You've been hiding for too long." Rachel's jaw tight. She didn't respond. Words weren't needed. She was ready. The base had transformed. What had once been a familiar stretch of asphalt, a mundane checkpoint at the Joint Base Norfolk, now felt like a battlefield etched in shadows and dust. Rachel Hayes' eyes scanned every corner, every darkened doorway, every edge where a figure could be lurking. The intruder who had appeared moments ago wasn't just skilled. They were fast, deliberate, and deadly. And now they were moving. Callahan's voice snapped her back to the present. "They're heading for the inner compound," he said, low and urgent, his own gaze locked on the fleeing figure. "Move fast. Don't let them get away." Rachel nodded, adrenaline surging. Years of experience in hostile territory coalesced into pure instinct. She had been chased, and survived far worse than this. But the knowledge that the intruder was inside a supposedly secure base made every step more dangerous. Every turn could conceal a trap, every shadow could hide a second or third operative. The rogue didn't run blindly. Their movements were calculated, almost surgical. They ducked under security cameras, weaved between supply trucks, and vanished around a corner where Rachel and Callahan were forced to split to maintain coverage. Rachel's boots pounded the tarmac as she took the left flank, scanning for signs, listening for the faintest hint of sound that could reveal the intruder's path. Her senses were alive, every nerve alert. The base was a maze she knew intimately, but the intruder had the advantage of unpredictability, blending into shadows, anticipating the guards, exploiting blind spots. Callahan's voice came over her radio, clipped and precise. "He's heading toward the underground tunnel access. Watch the corners." Her pulse quickened. Underground tunnels. That was where missions went from difficult to deadly. Confined spaces, limited visibility, and no room for error, perfect for ambushes. Rachel adjusted her grip on her sidearm, ready to engage if necessary. The sound of faint footsteps echoed ahead. She followed, silent and precise, moving with the fluidity of someone who had trained to operate in hostile territory without leaving a trace. The rogue was fast, but they left subtle signs: disturbed gravel, scuff marks along the wall, a discarded glove. Small, almost imperceptible, but enough for Rachel to track them. As she reached the corner, she glimpsed movement ahead. The rogue was climbing into the entrance of the tunnel, their silhouette disappearing into darkness. She signaled Callahan, who had taken the opposite route, and together they advanced, descending into the narrow, dimly lit tunnels. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of metal and concrete. Every sound, the scrape of boots, the drip of water, the echo of their own breathing amplified, filling the tunnels with tension. Rachel felt the familiar rush of focus, the clarity that came in moments of life-or-death stakes. This was where her past and present collided, where every decision mattered. Suddenly, a faint light flickered ahead. The rogue had paused, checking a security panel. Rachel moved closer, keeping to the shadows, calculating the risk. Callahan moved silently behind her, covering her back with the precision of a SEAL commander. Rachel's mind raced. This wasn't just an intruder. This was someone with a plan, someone who knew how to navigate the base and its security systems. And the fact that they had come here wasn't random. It was deliberate, targeted, and personal. The rogue moved again, disappearing further into the tunnel. Rachel followed, keeping her breathing even, every sense alert. She felt the weight of the situation pressing down. This was no routine chase. Whoever had orchestrated this had anticipated her every move, planned for her skills, and had left traps waiting for her. A sudden noise, metal clanging against concrete, echoed through the tunnel. Rachel froze, signaling Callahan. The rogue had triggered something. Lights flickered overhead, casting long, distorted shadows along the walls. The tunnels were labyrinthine, and one wrong step could be fatal. Rachel's instincts screamed at her to move carefully, to anticipate every angle. She darted forward, rounding a corner, and saw the rogue up ahead, crouched near a maintenance hatch. They were trying to access another level, possibly to escape further into the base. Rachel acted on instinct. She lunged, grabbing the rogue by the arm and twisting sharply. The intruder struggled, but Rachel's training held firm, controlled, precise, efficient. Callahan moved in immediately, securing the rogue's weapon and cutting off their escape route. For a moment the rogue was pinned, breathing heavily, eyes darting for a way out. "You think you've won," they hissed. "This is just the beginning. You have no idea what's coming." Rachel's jaw tightened. "Try me," she said, voice steady, controlled. "We end this now, or you won't get another chance." The rogue's gaze flicked toward the tunnel behind them, a hint of calculation passing across their features. Rachel realized that this was more than just a single operative. It was a coordinated effort. Whoever had sent them knew the layout, knew the weaknesses, knew exactly how to manipulate the situation. Callahan stepped closer, his eyes scanning the shadows. "They're not alone," he warned. "Someone else is in here." Rachel's pulse quickened. She had anticipated traps, but this was a new level of complexity. Whoever was orchestrating this had resources, knowledge, and patience. The rogue was just the first wave, a distraction, a test. The rogue attempted to push past her, but Rachel reacted instantly, throwing them against the wall with controlled force. "Stop struggling," she commanded. "It won't help." The rogue spat at her feet, eyes wild. "You think this ends here? They've already won. You're walking into a trap you can't escape." Rachel's hand tightened around her sidearm, ready for any movement. Callahan circled to cover the rogue's blind spots, and together they secured the immediate area. The tunnels were momentarily silent, the only sound the distant hum of ventilation and the rogue's ragged breathing. Rachel scanned ahead, analyzing every shadow, every possible escape route, every angle that could conceal another threat. She felt the familiar edge of adrenaline sharpen her focus, the clarity that came only in true danger. And then from deeper within the tunnel system, a sound, a low, deliberate click echoed off the walls. Rachel's eyes narrowed. She recognized it instantly, the sound of a trigger being prepared, a weapon being armed. Her pulse surged. "They've set something up," she muttered under her breath. "Callahan, move." In a flash, Callahan shifted, covering her as she advanced carefully, eyes scanning for the source of the sound. The rogue operative had stopped moving, seemingly aware that the situation was escalating beyond their control. Rachel pressed forward, heart pounding, and then she saw it. A security panel, tampered with, wires exposed, a faint red glow indicating activation. Whoever had planted it intended to use it as a trap, a defensive mechanism, possibly lethal, designed to stop anyone pursuing them. Rachel's mind raced. She had encountered booby traps before, improvised explosives, and electronic defenses in hostile territories, but never within the supposed safety of a military base. Someone with inside knowledge had orchestrated this, and it was clear. They had anticipated her every move. She knelt quickly, inspecting the device, calculating the risks. Callahan's voice was low but firm behind her. "We need to disable it before it's too late." Rachel's fingers moved deftly, manipulating the wires, bypassing the trigger mechanism with skill born of countless missions. Sweat beaded on her forehead, every nerve alive, every second stretching with tension. Finally, the device clicked harmlessly, disarmed. Rachel exhaled slowly, standing and surveying the tunnel. The rogue operative had slumped slightly, dazed but still alive, a look of frustration and disbelief crossing their face. But Rachel knew the threat was far from over. Whoever had orchestrated this attack had resources, planning, and patience. The rogue was only the first wave, the test, the distraction, the opening move. Her phone vibrated again. Another encrypted message. "You passed the first test, but the real game begins now. They are coming for you, Hayes." Rachel's stomach twisted. The chase wasn't over. The tunnels had been just the beginning. Whoever was behind this had planned every step, and the stakes were escalating with terrifying precision. Callahan's hand rested briefly on her shoulder, a grounding presence in the chaos. "We'll get through this," he said, voice low, firm. "But we need to stay sharp. They won't make a mistake twice." Rachel nodded, eyes narrowing. Her training, her instincts, her past, all converged into a single purpose: survive, protect, and uncover the truth. The base was no longer just a military installation. It was a battlefield, a labyrinth, and a proving ground. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar rush of clarity. Every mission she had ever undertaken had led to this moment, and she was ready. The base above ground seemed deceptively calm as Rachel Hayes and Jason Callahan emerged from the tunnels. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting long shadows across the tarmac, but to Rachel, every shadow now carried menace. Her gaze swept the area, sharp and unrelenting, trained to detect movement, anomaly, or threat. The rogue operatives were neutralized, or so she thought, but the encrypted messages and subtle disturbances made it clear. This was just the beginning. Callahan's voice was low, tight with urgency. "They're organized, Hayes. Whoever sent the rogues knows our patterns, knows our protocols. This isn't random." Rachel nodded, scanning the perimeter with a practiced eye. "No, this is bigger. Someone high up, someone with clearance, orchestrated everything, from the tunnel diversion to the timing of their approach. And they've been watching me." Callahan frowned. "You think this ties to your past missions?" Rachel's lips pressed together. "I know it does." Every operation she had ever conducted, every covert mission, every identity she had assumed, all of it had been meticulously documented in classified files. And now someone had gained access, someone capable of tracking her moves and predicting her reactions. That level of knowledge wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. Her mind flashed back to the first rogue operative, the words they had spat at her. "This is just the beginning." She realized with a cold certainty that these operatives weren't just random enemies. They were instruments of a larger plan. And the plan was designed with one purpose: to expose her, test her, and perhaps eliminate her entirely. Callahan's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. "We need to identify the source, and fast. Whoever's behind this isn't just sending threats, they're testing limits, probing weaknesses." Rachel exhaled slowly, grounding herself. "Agreed, but we need evidence, patterns, anything that can lead us to the orchestrator." They moved cautiously toward the command center, a heavily fortified hub where the base's communications and security systems converged. Every step felt like walking a tightrope. The rogue operatives might have been neutralized, but others could be lurking, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Inside the command center, Rachel's eyes scanned banks of monitors. Security footage, personnel movement logs, access records, everything was displayed with meticulous precision. She knew immediately where to begin. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up feeds from the tunnels, the gate, and other key areas. "Look at this," she murmured, pointing to a time-stamped feed from the tunnels. The footage showed the rogue operative moving with calculated precision, but subtle anomalies were visible. A slight hesitation near a wall, a shadow moving independently, a hand signal she had learned to recognize during covert operations. Callahan leaned in. A guide. Rachel's mind clicked into place. Yes, someone on the inside, someone feeding them information, giving them routes, timing, and access points. She continued scanning, cross-referencing access logs with personnel files. Every name, every shift, every clearance level was analyzed. Then she noticed it, a series of small but deliberate discrepancies. Certain keycards had been used outside of scheduled times, doors accessed without corresponding entries in the logs. Whoever had done this had knowledge of security protocols and an intimate understanding of base operations. Callahan's brow furrowed, internal compromise and highly sophisticated. Rachel's lips pressed into a thin line. Exactly, and whoever's behind this knows me. They know my history, my missions, and they're orchestrating this for a purpose. The realization struck her with full force. This wasn't a random attack. This was personal. Someone had a vendetta, and they were willing to use the full machinery of the base, and perhaps more to achieve it. Rachel's secure phone vibrated again, displaying a new message. Her heart skipped. She opened it. "You found the patterns, good. But the deeper truth is worse. We've infiltrated everything you care about." The message was unsigned, cryptic, and chilling. The phrasing implied more than a single adversary. It suggested a network, a conspiracy extending beyond the base, beyond even the rogue operatives. Rachel looked at Callahan, voice tight. "They've infiltrated the system. Communications, operations, intel. They could be anyone, officers, technicians, contractors, and they know I'm here." Callahan's expression hardened. "Then we have to move fast, identify the key players and isolate them before they strike again." Rachel nodded, already thinking several steps ahead. Every operation she had ever run had taught her one thing: timing was everything. She needed leverage, intelligence, and an exit plan, all while navigating a base that had become a labyrinth of unseen threats. They worked quickly, cross-referencing anomalies in the logs, tracing access points, and identifying suspicious patterns. Gradually, a web began to emerge, hinting at a shadow network operating within the base. It was methodical, deliberate, and lethal in its efficiency. Whoever had built this network had spent months, possibly years, preparing for this moment. Then a name appeared, a familiar one connected to one of her past missions overseas. Her pulse quickened. She hadn't expected to see this person again, certainly not here, orchestrating events with such precision. Callahan leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowing at the screen. "Do you know them?" Rachel swallowed hard. "Yes, and that's bad, very bad." The operative in question had been one of her former allies, someone she had trusted implicitly during high-stakes missions. They had vanished years ago, presumed dead during a covert extraction gone wrong. The thought that this person was alive, and now orchestrating a conspiracy against her, sent a chill through her spine. Rachel's fingers flew across the keyboard, digging deeper into the digital breadcrumbs. Emails, encrypted messages, access records. It was all there, carefully hidden but traceable for someone with her skill set. Every trace pointed to one undeniable truth. Someone she had once saved, someone she had trusted, had become the architect of her current nightmare. Callahan's voice cut through her thoughts. "We have a lead, but be careful. This person knows your methods as well as you know theirs." Rachel's jaw tightened. She had anticipated confrontation but not betrayal at this scale, not from someone she had once considered an ally. Every memory, every shared operation flashed through her mind. The moments of trust, the life-or-death decisions, the reliance on one another. And now, all of it had been weaponized against her. A sudden alert flashed across the monitor, motion detected near the command center's secondary entrance. Rachel's heart skipped. The conspirator wasn't content to remain hidden. They were advancing, moving closer, testing, probing, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Rachel grabbed her sidearm, sliding it into readiness. Callahan did the same. Every muscle was coiled, every sense heightened. This was no longer about reconnaissance or analysis. The conspiracy had arrived physically, and they intended to confront her directly. The door to the command center hissed open. Shadows moved, deliberate, controlled, lethal. Rachel's pulse surged and she stepped forward, sidearm raised, eyes locked. The figure that emerged was someone she had not expected, a mixture of familiarity and threat. And as their gaze met hers, Rachel realized with a jolt. The web of betrayal extended further than she could have imagined, and the person standing before her had not come alone. The command center felt like a trap closing in. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long, distorted shadows across the room, illuminating the two figures who had just stepped out of the darkness. Rachel Hayes' pulse surged as she assessed them. Both operatives were highly trained, calm, precise in their movements, and dangerously confident. They weren't just intruders. They were instruments of a much larger plan, and Rachel knew instinctively that this plan had been months, or even years in the making. Callahan's hand hovered over his weapon, eyes scanning for exits, threats, anything that could give them an advantage. "We need to control this room," he said, voice low but commanding. "No surprises, stay sharp." Rachel's eyes never left the figure closest to her. Something about their posture, the way they carried themselves, was familiar, a deadly elegance she recognized from past missions. Her stomach tightened. This was no rogue operative. This was someone with history, someone who had once been in her life, someone she had trusted. The taller figure stepped forward, lips curling into a small, controlled smile. "Rachel Hayes," they said, voice smooth, almost casual but edged with malice. "Or should I say, Agent Hayes? Funny how life keeps circling back." Rachel's jaw tightened. "You," she said, voice cold and controlled. Recognition flooded her mind. This wasn't just an operative gone rogue. This was someone she had worked alongside during a classified mission overseas, someone presumed dead. The betrayal cut sharper than any blade. The figure continued, eyes glinting. "I've been patient, watching, waiting for the right moment. And now here you are, exposed, vulnerable, playing at gate duty. How quaint." Rachel's fists clenched. "You think this is about gate duty, about me being exposed? You're wrong, it's about survival, and I don't fail." The second figure shifted, stepping closer to flank Rachel and Callahan, movement smooth and predatory. Rachel recognized them too, not by face, but by gait, precision, and the unmistakable signature of elite training. Her mind raced, cataloging options, escape routes, and tactical advantages. Callahan's voice was tight with tension. "They've trained for you, Hayes. Every move, every reaction, they know what you can do, but you know them too." Rachel nodded subtly, muscles coiled, mind firing at maximum capacity. Every past encounter, every mission, every contingency she had prepared in her career surged into the present. She wasn't just defending herself. She was defending the base, everyone on it, and the fragile secrecy of her past. The taller figure spoke again. "You've always been fast, precise, lethal, but your enemies learn. We've adapted. You're predictable, Rachel, and predictable people are easy to trap." Rachel's pulse spiked, but she stayed composed. "I don't underestimate anyone, least of all you." A flick of the hand from the second figure triggered a subtle device on the wall. The lights dimmed further, a low hum vibrating through the room. Rachel immediately recognized the tactic: electronic disruption, designed to interfere with communications, security feeds, and perhaps even weapon systems. The mastermind had anticipated her reliance on technology, on the base's infrastructure, and had prepared to neutralize it. Callahan cursed under his breath. "They're cutting off our eyes and ears. We have to rely on instincts. Old school, move." Rachel sprang into action, sidearm raised, calculating angles, lines of fire, and choke points. Every motion was deliberate, every step strategic. The taller figure advanced, weapons drawn, but Rachel sidestepped with fluid precision, bringing her own weight and momentum to bear. A swift elbow to the intruder's midsection, a kick to destabilize. They weren't expecting her to react this quickly in the confined space. Callahan took the second figure head-on, a flurry of precise strikes and counters. The clash of bodies, fists, and steel echoed in the command center. The noise was chaotic, but Rachel's focus remained absolute. Amid the physical confrontation, Rachel's mind raced. The rogue operatives, the tunnel chase, the encrypted messages, all pointed to one undeniable truth. The mastermind had orchestrated everything, anticipating her moves, setting the stage for a confrontation that had been meticulously planned. Her sidearm cracked and a shot rang out, precise, controlled, aimed to neutralize without fatality. The taller figure staggered but didn't fall, eyes blazing with defiance. "Not enough," they spat. "You've only seen the beginning." Rachel's heart thudded. She knew they were right. This confrontation was a test, but also a lure. Whoever had orchestrated this wanted more than a fight. They wanted to manipulate, to probe, to break her. And they weren't working alone. A sudden noise behind her drew Rachel's attention. Through the flickering light, she saw another shadow detach itself from the periphery. A figure moving with the ease of someone who had been observing, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Callahan reacted instantly, intercepting the new threat, but Rachel realized that this was the final piece. The true mastermind, the one who had orchestrated the entire web of betrayal, was here, watching, waiting, pulling strings from the shadows. Rachel's eyes narrowed. She had anticipated traps, ambushes, betrayals, but she hadn't anticipated the emotional weight of seeing someone she had trusted, presumed dead, leading this assault. The betrayal was a knife to her heart, but she steeled herself. Emotion had no place in this fight. Precision, skill, and survival instincts were all that mattered. The taller figure regained balance and advanced again, forcing Rachel back toward the central console. Sparks flew from the disrupted electronics, illuminating her features, highlighting the fierce determination in her eyes. "You've always been fast," the figure taunted. "But fast isn't enough. You think you can stop me. You think you can protect them all." Rachel's lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't think I know." With a fluid motion, she spun, using her body weight to unbalance the intruder, bringing them down toward the floor. Callahan simultaneously neutralized the second figure. For a moment, silence reigned, but Rachel knew it was temporary. The mastermind had been orchestrating this from the beginning, and they weren't done. Then the secure phone in Rachel's pocket vibrated violently. She pulled it out, hands steady despite adrenaline surging. The screen displayed another encrypted message. "You've handled the players, but the game isn't over. Check the files now." Rachel's stomach twisted. The files. That was the key. Whoever had orchestrated this had left evidence, a trail, something that would reveal the full scope of the conspiracy. But retrieving it wouldn't be easy. The base's network had been compromised, and every movement risked exposure. Callahan's eyes met hers, unwavering. "Are you ready?" he asked. Rachel exhaled slowly, fingers brushing the cold steel of her sidearm. "Always," she replied. Together they moved toward the central server room, every sense alert, every step calculated. The confrontation had been a warning, a test of skill and reflex, but the true battle was about to begin. The mastermind had left a trail, and Rachel knew she had to follow it to uncover the truth and survive. The rogue operatives lay incapacitated, but Rachel could feel it in her bones. The mastermind had anticipated this. They were watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Every step Rachel took toward the server room was a step deeper into a web of deceit, betrayal, and deadly precision. And then, a flicker on the security monitors revealed a figure entering the server room before them. Someone moving with purpose, leaving no trace but intent. Rachel's pulse surged. This was it. The mastermind had made their move. The final confrontation was imminent, and nothing about the base or her past would prepare her for what she was about to face. The server room was a coffin of tension. The hum of machinery, the flicker of monitors, and the faint buzz of the disrupted electronics filled the air like a storm on the brink of breaking. Rachel Hayes, eyes locked onto the figure at the far end of the room, the mastermind who had orchestrated everything, the shadow pulling strings that had upended her life and brought chaos into the base. Recognition struck her like a thunderbolt. The face before her was not just a ghost from the past. It was someone she had trusted implicitly, someone she had considered family in the chaos of overseas missions. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound she had ever sustained. "You," Rachel breathed, voice low but steady. "I should have known you were alive." The mastermind's lips curved into a controlled, almost chilling smile. "Alive, yes, but more importantly, prepared. Everything I've done has been about precision, about testing limits, about showing you exactly how vulnerable you can be." Rachel's hands tightened on her sidearm. "Vulnerable? No, I'm never vulnerable. Not to you, not to anyone." Callahan moved to her side, a silent shield, eyes scanning the room for threats, angles, anything the mastermind might exploit. "Hayes, we don't have much time. Whoever else is on this network could be watching, listening. Make your move count." Rachel's pulse raced. Every moment of the past days, the gate ambush, the tunnels, the rogue operatives, the conspiracies in the command center, had led to this. Every skill she had ever learned, every instinct, every tactical decision was needed now. The mastermind took a deliberate step forward, hands slightly raised, unarmed but radiating confidence. "Do you really think you can stop me with brute force, Rachel? I've planned for every scenario, anticipated every move." Rachel's lips pressed together. She didn't answer. Words weren't necessary. Her movements would speak louder than any declaration. She pivoted slightly, keeping her sidearm trained, scanning for secondary threats. The servers around them flickered under the strain of recent sabotage. One wrong move and the room could turn into a trap, not for them, but for the information they desperately needed. Callahan's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Disrupt their line of sight, get the controls." Rachel nodded. She had a plan, but it required precision, timing, and trust in instinct. She feigned a step to the left, baiting the mastermind into overextending. As predicted, the figure shifted, mirroring her movements, calculating her position. This was a game of anticipation, reflexes, and psychology. Suddenly, the mastermind lunged, attempting to disable the server controls, which housed the critical evidence of the conspiracy. Rachel reacted instantly, sliding to intercept, using the momentum to bring the figure down against the console. Sparks flew as they collided, the smell of ozone and overheated circuits filling the room. The struggle was brutal, a clash of strength, skill, and willpower. Rachel felt every calculated strike, every counter, every push and pull. The betrayal lent a cold fire to her movements. She fought not just for survival, but to stop someone she had once trusted from destroying everything she held dear. Callahan intercepted a secondary operative who appeared from the shadows, someone attempting to intervene, perhaps to protect the mastermind. A quick, precise disarm, a controlled takedown, and the secondary threat was neutralized. But Rachel knew the mastermind was far from finished. With a sudden, calculated twist, the mastermind tried to escape, aiming for a hidden exit Rachel hadn't noticed in her initial scan. But she anticipated it, pivoting, blocking the path with her body. The mastermind froze, realizing the trap had turned against them. Rachel's breathing was steady, but her mind raced. Every scenario, every possible outcome was running at hyperspeed in her mind. The base, the conspiracies, the rogue operatives, the tunnels, they were all part of a larger design. And now she had to force the final resolution. "You underestimated me," Rachel said, voice calm but lethal. "You counted on my hesitation, my sense of ethics, my reluctance to kill. You're wrong." The mastermind's eyes flickered with a brief hint of doubt, enough for Rachel to capitalize. With precise, controlled force, she leveraged her weight to push the figure against the central console, immobilizing them without causing fatal injury. Sparks flew, monitors flickered, and alarms briefly rang as the system stabilized. Callahan secured the perimeter, covering Rachel as she accessed the server controls. Fingers flying, she decrypted files, pulling evidence, logs, and encrypted messages that revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. It was staggering. A web of rogue operatives, corrupted officers, and shadow networks embedded within multiple military bases. Every piece of the puzzle she had been chasing, the ambushes, the tunnels, the internal betrayals, was part of a larger, coordinated plan. Rachel exhaled slowly. The mastermind struggled, restrained but defiant. "You can't stop this," they spat. "Even if I'm caught, the network is vast. You'll never contain it all." Rachel's eyes were cold, unyielding. "Maybe not, but I can stop you here and now." She glanced at Callahan. "We have what we need. It's over for now." Callahan's hand rested on the restrained mastermind. "For now," he agreed. "But you're right. This network runs deep, and whoever is behind it may still be out there." Rachel's gaze softened slightly, not in mercy for the mastermind, but in acknowledgement of the complexity of human motives, trust, and betrayal. She had fought wars overseas, faced enemies in foreign lands, but this, the betrayal, the calculated manipulation, the personal stakes, was different. It had cut closer than any battlefield injury ever could. She accessed the final files, uploading evidence to secure military channels, ensuring that the corruption, the rogue networks, and the compromised operatives would be exposed. Every name, every link, every hidden connection was documented. Justice wouldn't be immediate, but it would come. The mastermind, realizing their plan had been thwarted, slumped in frustration. Rachel's eyes hardened. "Your arrogance was your weakness. You thought history, trust, and training wouldn't adapt. You were wrong." Outside the server room, the base was quiet again, deceptively calm after the storm of chaos. Guards and personnel were beginning to assess the aftermath, unaware of how close they had come to catastrophe. Rachel and Callahan stepped out into the morning light, muscles tense, minds still running at full alert. Callahan exhaled, breaking the silence. "You did it. We did it, but you're right, this isn't over. There are more players out there, more threats, and they'll be coming." Rachel's eyes scanned the horizon, calm but alert. The weight of the past days, the betrayals, and the danger settled over her. But beneath it, a spark of resolve burned brighter than ever. She had survived, adapted, and emerged stronger. Her secure phone buzzed once more, another encrypted message. She opened it, expecting threats. Instead, a single line appeared. "Well done, but be ready. The real game has only just begun." Rachel exhaled slowly, a faint smirk curling at the corner of her lips. She had survived the betrayal, neutralized the immediate threats, and uncovered the conspiracy. But the message was clear. The world she had returned to, once mundane, was now a battlefield again. And she was ready. Callahan glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. "You always were." Rachel nodded, eyes scanning the horizon, hand resting lightly on her sidearm. "Let them come."